Uh, okay, Dawit, it's nice to meet you. As I said, I'm obviously trying to work on a story on the gaming space on the continent, and you guys have clearly been one of the shining stars from the east side of the continent now. I just kind of like wanted to hear your story as well, how you got into making games before we get into like where you are and what lays ahead. If you just give me like a nice little background about Dawit and Qene Games.
All right, definitely. Thank you for having me, of course. I'd like to ask, is this an English or a Amharic interview?
Let's do it in English, just for the sake of, I don't wanna make mistakes when I translate later on.
Sounds good. All right. All right, so a bit of an intro to myself. I am Dawit Abraham, co-founder and CEO of Qene Games. I am a spokesperson of the Pan-African Gaming Group. I come from an engineering background and have been building games for some time now, over 7 years. And I guess you'll get to know more about me throughout the conversation.
Okay. I mean, I think yeah, you being the spokesperson for the Pan-African Gaming Coalition, it's one place I found your name, but also Qene Games is been one of the few names on the continent that has at least made a name for itself in terms of when it's making games, and other players also, like speak very highly of you. Can you just tell me what Qene Games is like, kind of how it came about, and what your journey has been like over the past 7 years?
That's very flattering, first of all. I would love to know who those people are. I'd love to thank them very much. So Qene Games has been around Qene Games Inc. has been around for 3 years, but we've been building games as Qene Technologies for over 6 years now. We're an Ethiopian-based startup. The team, myself, my co-founder Samuel Sisai, and a team of around 10 people now. We're all based in Ethiopia, and we've been building games from Ethiopia. We've launched a couple of games over the past few years. Two were most recognized, Kukulu and Gabetables won the Apps Africa app for being one of them for being the best entertainment app, and one of them for being the best app in Africa. We try to build games that we believe are fun and beautiful, and eventually end up being African arts, right? Contributions to the African art industry and the gaming industry. But one of our biggest motivation has been that of, for example, I can give you a story. In 2011, the Polish Prime Minister met with Barack Obama, and when they exchanged gifts, I believe, Polish Prime Minister gave him a game as a gift. This game was The Witcher, and the reason that the Prime Minister gave Barack Obama The Witcher is that game was built by a Polish gaming company called Project CD Red. It's one of the biggest global gaming companies, and it's one of the reasons that Poland was economically very strong during the 2008 financial crisis. Of course, there were many reasons that contributed to Poland kind of withstanding that crisis, but one of them was definitely the success of this game that sold millions of copies globally. And I feel the same way about the Ethiopian and then the African gaming industry. I think there's a huge possibility here to create something that not only is beautiful, not only is telling of the continent's story, beautiful culture and so on, but it can actually become a strong economical pillar to the whole continent. And that's really what we've been trying to do over the past few years.
I mean, that's an interesting thing to hear, because the way you're approaching it is, it's more like Ethiopia or Africa to the world, and you use the word, I think, art as well, kind of exporting and presenting I guess, your home to the rest of the world, and not necessarily seeing where the market is and building for that market is not how you're approaching it, or is there a combination?
Well, if you look at the current social awakening, if you call it that, you see that uh, global content is being consumed more and more. You see Afrobeat, Ethio jazz is taking over the world. You see that Korean movies are
Mm-hmm.
the best rated shows on Netflix, and this trend has been moving at an exponential pace most recently. So this is something that we're actually trying to get into. We want to build games. I mean, we're not trying to build African games. We're African developers. Whatever games we build are naturally going to be African, right? But the beauty is that because of recent advancements in technology, almost anyone can actually build games now. And this is a huge opportunity, especially for continents like Africa, because we have a market. Like the next billion players are most likely going to come from Africa, and of course we have a huge talent pool that can actually create content that can be consumed locally and why not globally. That's the approach that we're actually taking.
Yeah. Can I get into like some details of how some of the more prominent games that you've made have performed on the global scene? And I'm assuming you make mainly mobile phone games, not console or PC games, right?
Yes, yeah, we're focused on mobile.
Yeah. So like, how has Kukulu done, or any of your, the games that you have made?
All right. So one thing that we've noticed is of all the games that we have, well, I mean, when I say all, we've only built and launched 5 games so far. Kukulu seems to have a lot of attention and a good performance in Ethiopia, while Gabeta seems to have a better performance globally, and this is in the US and some other European countries. With every game that you build, it's usually a hit and miss, and it's also a work in progress with every launch, trying to get the game to be more fun, more engaging, and more adopted by the global community. But one thing that we have seen is that Gabata is definitely going to be a hit, and that's something that I can hope for, but something that we're really looking forwards to.
Okay. Uh, and then just kind of like in the way you approach the game making process itself, are you like how does that work? Are you experimenting a lot, trying to put up or R&D-ish a lot of ideas into like first prototypes and seeing how it does, or are you focusing on an idea and zoning in onto it and then launching it up?
So we do a lot of experimentation. We actually have a team that is continuously trying to actually build new games. There are some games that we've actually begun and they just never actually ended up being produced. There's and each game that's actually produced went through an experimentation process. So this is actually also the global trend in building games. The more easier it is to actually build a prototype and get it to users as fast as you can, the better, because you don't want to be spending a whole year trying to build out on an idea which may or may not work. This is something, a mistake we've made before. I mean, being in the business for 5 years teaches you a lot of things, but more recently we've really gone into this experimental based production.
Okay. And then in terms of how you do your distribution, how does that work? I was talking to Cordell from Carry First, and they've obviously attracted a lot of interest and a lot of funding of in the past couple of months. And they seem to really try and bring a lot of the players on the continent, adapt them and get them ready for the world, I guess. So you having been in the space for 7 years and having a name for yourself, your studio having a name of its own, how what kind of like partnerships and relationships are you building for that distribution?
Yeah, so distribution is definitely one of the key challenges, especially as an indie game studio. the most optimal way to go about it is to find a publisher, as we've done with Carry First. Carry First, Lucien Cordal have been working with us for the past 2.5 years, publishing our games, that is distributing it globally and then really taking care of the sales channel around the game, which is a very, very good thing for indie studios to actually go for. Something else that's also coming up, the Pan-African Gaming Group is trying to actually help studios figure out this part of the conundrum, right? You as a game developer want to focus a lot of your time on building quality content. Once you do that, the next phase of taking it and selling it, distributing it in the world, it's usually, unless you have the funds and the expertise, better taken care of by larger publishers, which is something that K First and the Pan African Gaming Group is currently trying to actually do very well.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll come back to this the Pan African Group in a bit. But back kind of like to you, like how have you managed to kind of like keep up the, I guess the whole production for the past 6 years, 7 years? Because I'm not sure how profitable the gaming business has been in the past, especially on the continent. And you know, how big is your team? And you know, like how's the kind of the setup for the operation in Ethiopia itself?
Yeah, so for the past few years, especially, I mean, speaking from experience in Ethiopia, we've had a bit of a problem selling the games, right? Especially to the local market. And that is mostly due to the lack of this fintech solutions that were not widely available. But most recently, this has actually changed. You have the launch of Teleber, which really changed a lot of how we work and how we sell games. We have Ethio Telecom, which is ramping up their efforts to kind of adopt this content-driven world and sell our games and allow us to actually use their infrastructure to be able to monetize them as well in the country. That's been very helpful. And this is something that has recently made gaming profitable. We've been around for 5 years, but I would say that we became profitable only in 2022. That's something I can be happy about, and that's something that gives me hope that the continent will also actually be able to follow suit in this types of different types of profitable business models for games. There have been very successful gaming studios in Africa. I mean, if you look into South Africa, especially, some other African gaming studios who've actually made a huge name for themselves by kind of tapping into the global market. But again, gaming it's as big as and as a huge value chain that you can actually tap into. It's also the type of business where it's a hit and miss. You have to build quite a lot of games to get to the one that's actually going to be a global success. And in a way, that's kind of the advantage that we have. Production costs in Ethiopia and Africa generally are cheaper than you would have in the rest of the world, including China and India, to be honest. And that kind of gives us an advantage in that for every one game that's built outside of Africa, we can build maybe 5. It gives us the numbers advantage and allows us to actually build a lot more games, out of which some could be globally successful. And that's really the advantage that we all have as African gaming studios. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. It's, I mean, you mentioning like the difficulties you're facing in Ethiopia, and then seeing like the Ember and the Q-Tele coming up with new payment methods as kind of a solution. What I was getting is like, okay, that is true for the Ethiopian market, but you could have done, and you probably were doing this already, but for the rest of the mobile moneyed markets in the continent, both in East and West Africa, was that accessible to you as well?
One of the things that prevents you from selling your games in the rest of the continent is that a lot of people want to use mobile money, and these are, I would say, the most convenient ways of payments throughout the rest of Africa. However, not a lot of the app stores, like not Google Store and App Store, do not fully embrace these technologies. They still want you to use this, GPay, Apple Pay, and debit card and credit cards, which are really not that popular in the continent. I remember that Google was trying to actually bring in M-Pesa as a form of payment. However, I'm not sure if that was a very successful project on their behalf. But then you actually look into every other gaming company in Africa, and everyone tells you that mobile money is really the most convenient way to sell their games. And I think there's a lot of work to be done around that. There's a new store, the Gara store, built by Maseka Games, which is trying to actually solve this problem, which is aiming to become an app store and a game store for for the whole African continent, where it actually allows people to buy content using the most convenient methods available to them. But this has definitely been a problem, and it still continues to be a problem.
Say the name again. Who's building that up?
I believe it's Maseka Games, right? The name of the store is called Gara Store, Gara. Yeah, store. Yeah, it's poised to be the main distribution mechanism for the Pan-African Gaming Group.
Okay. And then, but when it comes to your game specifically, are they not free to play?
It depends. So we do follow the free-to-play model. We have our games available for free in the rest of the world. One thing that we haven't been able to do in Ethiopia is follow that same model because of some restrictions from, like I said, Google and Apple. And in Ethiopia, we've kind of been forced to go in a different route. So we're actually going to a subscription model, which seems to be actually working very well currently. In the event that we actually have access to the fintech and then the free-to-play model in Ethiopia, that's the model that we want to actually go into. But so far in Ethiopia, we're choosing the subscription route.
Were you part of the Curry versus 5-month bootcamp that they had last year? Did you go?
Oh no. We went and visited the teams and everyone, but we weren't part of that program.
You guys were too big for it, huh?
No, never.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about the Pan-African. What is it called? The Pan-African Gaming.
Yes, it's a Pan-African Gaming Group. It's a collection of, I would say, 10 of some of the best African gaming studios in Africa. We want to actually create a group that is more catering to the continent as well as built by the continent. So this is something that we're trying to create that really adapts to the Web3 and decentralized model that the world was really moving towards right now. And the whole goal is to kind of empower the entire gaming ecosystem. And then this is not just the game creators, but also the community, the players, and just create a whole community around the gaming industry that would allow it to flourish and become one of the prominent gaming markets in the world. If you look at Africa, it's definitely poised to be the next big gaming market. If you look at everywhere else, China's really dominated, India's dominated, the rest of Asia is dominated, North America is kind of aging out, Europe is aging out. Africa seems to be the continent with the next billions of players coming, and young players coming to actually consume these games. And you have a continent that is very divided. Like there's a lot of countries in Africa, and there's a lot of political structures that do not allow you to actually sell stuff from one place to the other. There's a whole segregation throughout the continent that is definitely a problem to creating a giant gaming market. And this can only be solved by allowing everyone in the continent to actually come together and find a way to figure a solution to this problem. So one thing that we did is we actually went to 10 countries. And so the Pan-African Gaming Group actually has a gaming studio from currently Ethiopia, Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, South Africa, Tunisia, Rwanda, Tanzania, and this is a lot of countries from which can actually get a lot of consumers and content. And then together as the Pan-African Gaming Group, what we have accomplished is to bring together these gaming studios and figure out a way to collaborate on the games that we're building, pull together the resources that we have. We have, I mean, together more than 200 employees, pull together the content that we have. Together we have, I think, more than 100 games, and figure out the markets that we each have. And together we have more than 500 million markets actually catered to. And that's really the goal of this group.
I hope you don't mind me being slightly pessimistic here with this question. And that is, when it comes to gaming, especially now and for the near future, the revenue you can generate from per user is definitely going to be much higher in the Western world than say in Africa, where Africa is probably going to have the least, right? So, and being in the gaming space allows you to just have the whole world as the market instead of the geographic locations that we are in. So why would the African Gaming Group have an African approach to it instead of trying to become part of the global, I don't know, any global group that is there?
I completely understand this question. So there's nothing stopping us from becoming a global company. That's the beauty of games. If there's nothing stopping Burna Boy's music from being consumed all over the globe, right? And it's the same with every content that we create. And to be honest, whatever we create is always going to be, or somewhat going to be available to the global market. And then we don't try to actually stop pushing for games from becoming this global phenomenon. But what we do recognize is that there's a huge giant, which is the African market, which is completely untapped. If you look at the global gaming industry, less than 1% of the more than $200 billion industry is actually coming from Africa. And that does not mean that there is nothing there. It just means it's huge, it's untapped, and it's there for the taking. And to us, from coming from the continent and producing games from the continent, it's purely the most achievable market and the easiest for us to actually go ahead and dominate this in a very short time. The second thing that you have to look for is that we're not building a community for now. We're also building a community for the future. If you look at the African spend, right, the economic situation of every household, the continent is urbanizing fast, the fastest in the world. The middle income is increasing. Again, one of the fastest economies in the world are actually in Africa. Most of the fastest growing economies are in Africa. So most definitely, within a very short amount of time, Africa is going to be one of the markets that is going to be a huge contender to the global gaming market. One final thing I can say about this: the North American and European gaming market is not even half of the Asian gaming market, if you look at it now. And that doesn't mean that that's how the economic spending capacity is dispersed throughout the world. It's just that there's a lot of gamers, there's a huge number advantage that Asia has, which we also believe Africa will be able to utilize within the next few amount of time.
That's a very good answer. You took my pessimism and turned it into optimism. Can I ask, Dawit, what's in the store for Qene Games in the next couple of months, next couple of years? What should we expect from you guys?
Well, that's a good question. We're actually launching a new game within the next few weeks or months. And the goal really is to keep building on what we have, to keep building these games, to keep growing our team. We're fundraising now, and then we're going to be fundraising in the future as well. At the end, we want to be able to say that we built an industry that that utilizes the local talent, the local creativity we have, and turned it into one of the major exports that the country's economy really depends on. And if you look at some of the games out there, Candy Crush making almost $2 million a day, a small app, less than, I think, 500 megabytes, even 100 megabytes, generates more annual revenue than the Ethiopian coffee industry as a whole. So that's the power of creativity and the power of technology that we have, and we can actually tap into. And with a country of 120 million people, we can produce a lot of games. This is not just Qene Games. We can have plenty of gaming companies in the country producing hundreds, if not thousands, of games, out of which some will be globally successful. And eventually, this is the goal that we have over the next few years. We want to beat the coffee export of Ethiopia. We want to beat this resource-based export and change it to a technology-based and creativity-based export, which I believe can become one of the strongest pillars for our country.
I mean, that's a big goal. I think next time I talk to the coffee sector, I need to tell them that you're coming for them, so they need to pull up.
I think I have done so on many occasions.
Very nice, very nice. I mean, okay, and I'll make this my last question and also ask you just if there's anything else that you want to add. But who else on the continent is kind of, like, and this is what I'm going to tell them, that, like someone told them that they're looking up to them, like, who are the other players that you see have a lot of potential and can play a big role in raising the whole gaming industry on the continent?
Wow, so many that I'm afraid to name names. I mean, each studio in the Pan-African the Pan-African Gaming Group is an inspiration to me all the time, to be honest. And everyone else that I see popping up, we have a WhatsApp group, the African Game Developers Group, that I just usually go into to get some motivation, some inspiration on what's happening in the African continent. And I would say that the continent is really awakened. And this is not just in gaming, and movies, art, music. It's really an amazing thing that you actually see going on. And I wouldn't want to name names, but this is just generally a huge source of inspiration for me.
Okay. I think, yeah, we've gone from the continent is rising to now the continent is awakening. So
yes, definitely.
Dawit, anything else you wanna push? You wanna just add?
One thing I would add: the biggest problem that the continent faces, talent is everywhere, but opportunity and funding is not. There's this really beautiful video that I saw, produced by Nas Daily. I don't want to get into it now, but it really made me realize that talent is really everywhere, but funding is really not. And the more we can actually get, especially local investors, to be interested and to be able to actually support all of this amazing things that are going on, I'm sure the faster we can get there. That's the one thing I'd like to leave.
Thanks, Dawit. I think, were you referring to the video about the guy who's making a car?
Yes, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Really made me think.
Yeah, it did. And the thing about this, like, it's not about talent and our abilities, it's about the opportunity. It just keeps coming up a lot, to be honest, in several conversations that I'm having.
Yeah.
Especially in the startup space, because it's so clear, it's so obvious. And if you're able to tap into it and package it by, say, making games as you guys are doing, then you're solving a thing. I think you're solving a problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dawit. በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Samuel.
Ciao, ciao.